I should also pull the books out of my shelf, and I just don't feel like it. Hi everyone, my name is Valerie B, and I'm back with another book review video. We've got a couple to go through today, which is exciting. It's now 2026, and at the start of the year, I gave myself the first 6 books of 2026 to read. It's an interesting group of books that I have. Honestly, a lot of the reason why they were put on this list is because of convenience, and they've been on my list for a while. So first off, what were the 6 books that I picked? First was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I chose this one because there's the film adaptation coming out this year, and I just wanted to be in the know. I've never read an Ali Hazelwood book in my life. Everyone has really great things to say about her books, so I wanted to dive into it, and it's been on my list for a while, especially. It's like a Mandela effect. I swear I had one of them. I swear I've seen it on my bookshelf. Every time I go to reach it, it's never there. So I don't know exactly what happened. If I came up with it all in my head, or if it was there and I somehow gave it to someone, I don't really know. But that's that. Then I had Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. This was put on here purely because of convenience, because it was available on the Libby app. And I was really intrigued by the cover for this, especially because the MMC had like a buzz cut, and I love me a buzz-cutted king. Then The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This book I actually borrowed from a friend, and so I really wanted to read it. 1, so I could give it back to her, and 2, she kept recommending it to me, and she had recently been reading a lot of the books I suggested her, so I was like, you know what, it's about time that I reciprocate that and I read a book that she's constantly recommending. So then The Rebel and the Rose by Catherine Doyle. This is the second in the Dagger and the Flame series, and I love the first book so much, and it just so happened that January was around the time the second book had just come out, and so I was like, this is a priority for me. I need to read it stat, because it's such a fun trilogy. So good so far. And we'll get into that more in a second. The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovolino. This has been all over TikTok recently ever since I saw Eden rave about it. And I trust Eden and her rec so much that I was like, I need to read this stat. And then lastly, Babel by R.F. Kuang. This was a gift from a friend, and I'm so glad it was a gift because I have been so wishy-washy with deciding on whether to buy this book or not and whether to read it or not, because every time I see the cover, that cover pulls me in, dude, and I'm like, this looks so good, and then I flip it over and I read the synopsis and then I go, actually, I don't think I would enjoy this. And so I've never been able to pull the trigger on starting the audiobook, renting it, buying it, any form of consuming it, because I'm like, it's not gripping me enough. And so my friend and I, for Christmas, what we did was we went to the bookstore and we bought each other a book that we think the other would enjoy, and she picked Babel for me. I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's read a book one of my friends has recommended. This is a gift. Let's consume it. Let's get into it. So those are my 6. It took me 2.5 months to finish all of them, but not too bad. Not too shabby, you know? So first, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this a 4 out of 5. In hindsight, it's probably more of a 3.5 out of 5. Because in the moment, it was so good, so fun, fast-paced, easy read. However, looking back on it, there's not a whole lot that stuck out to me, so I think it would be bumped down a bit more. So if you don't know the premise of this book, we have our FMC who is studying, biology? I don't know. She's doing her master's degree because she's wanting to research some sort of cancer. Her best friend has a thing for her ex, and she doesn't want her friend to feel bad that they've broken up or feel like she can't go after him and try to date him because this ex has a past with our FMC. And so she runs in to this doctor who has a big reputation of a lot of people don't like him, and he's a big hard ass. And she just goes and kisses him in the hallway one day. She pulls a Laura Jean to get her best friend off her back and be like, hey, it's all good. You can go date my ex because I've moved on. Then the teacher, the head scientist, who's from a different department, he proposes, hey, what if we keep up this facade? And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, I did not mean to do that. I know I did do it, but I didn't mean to, and we do not have to continue this. Thanks for doing me a solid, but let's not. I kind of regret it. Let's not start something from this. And he's like, no, actually, this would benefit both of us because apparently you have your friend drama, can't relate. And I need to prove to the higher ups in the academia world that I am committed to staying in California and finishing my research. And having a girlfriend will prove that because I don't date people and like other schools are trying to recruit me. So like, let's keep up the facade. Hey, I love me a good fake dating trope, but this was like kind of wild to me. In the book, they address that like, oh, the teacher guy, that MMC, he goes and talks to like HR essentially. And he's like, oh, it's okay that we're date because we're not in the same department. Like that would cause bigger issues, and because it's not the case, we're okay. Also, you're a graduate student, you're not undergrad, so that creates like another form of separation that makes this situation like okay. And hey, never experienced that, never met anyone who's experienced that, but that still doesn't sound okay to me. Like, I feel like that's still kind of problematic. I read the paperback and also did the audiobook with it. I don't know if it's just because of the narrator for the audiobook, but the MMC, his name is Adam, he came across as very autistic, very on the spectrum. And again, I don't know if that was like an intentional characterization and deliverance of the lines, but this man is just very smart in his own world, very particular, which, hey, maybe he's just very type A. That could be it too, now that I'm saying all these things out loud. Like, And he also, from what I understand of Allie Hazelwood, she's a big fan of Adam Driver, and so most of her MMCs are modeled after Adam Driver, and that really took me out. It also took me like half the book to realize Adam is Adam Driver. It took me half the book to make that connection, and once I did, I was like, I can't do it. I loved the fake dating premise. I loved that this book focused on two people in STEM academia, and our FMC was in grad school. As someone who is in grad school, like I appreciated that, but otherwise not a lot has stuck with me. But I'm still very excited for this adaptation. It's gonna be a real fun time watching it. I just know it. Next was Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. I gave this 3.75 stars out of 5. This was the second Hannah Bonham Young book that I've read, the first one being Out on a Limb in December, and I did like Out on a Limb, but I liked Next of Kin more. Out on a Limb, very wholesome. I liked how both the main characters had some form of like physical disability. I liked seeing that representation, but I feel like the second half of the book just kind of tapered off, kind of got a bit stale, got a bit boring. I feel like a lot of the issues got resolved the first half of the book, that the second half it's just them being happy and hunky-dory together, and I was like, that's great for you, but I'm personally a little bored, so what now? Like, now I'm just waiting for the book to end. Anyways, but we're not talking about Out on a Limb. We're talking about Next of Kin. I thought the plot was more intriguing. Again, like, kind of crazy, kind of silly. Like, there's no way this would happen in real life. Okay, so we have our FMC. She grew up in the foster care system. She was adopted. Her mom had a lot of drug and alcohol abuse going on, and she gets a call one day saying, hey, your mom unexpectedly had another child, and she listed you as the next of kin. Our FMC is 25 years old, and so now there's this 25-year age gap between her and her little sister. Because of how she was raised and how she grew up, she's deciding, hey, I don't want my little sister to go through the same thing. I will be her guardian. But in order for her to be her guardian, she has to go through all this paperwork. She has to prove she has a place to live. She has like the finances to care for her, this whole thing. But she's a freelance graphic designer. Because she works in freelance, it can be more difficult to have a steady income, right? Because it's based off like projects and where you can find work. It's not like a contract position or you're working for a corporation or something where it's more consistent pay. And so social services has this program where they pair up families where they're lacking in some part of their application, I guess, is the best way to put it. So our FMC, she has a place to live. She doesn't plan on moving. She plans to stay where she is, but her income is not super consistent. And then we introduce our MMC, who is struggling finding housing, but he has a job that has been consistent in paying him. He doesn't plan to leave the job, right? So because they both have what the other needs, social services partners the families together, and so they like live together. And then the guardians, the MMC and the FMC, fall in love. And from doing a bit of a deep dive on the reviews, people who work in that field have also been like, there's no way in hell that would actually happen. So, but you know, sometimes you just gotta suspend reality and dick around a little bit and find out. My only qualm with it was I feel like there could have been a bit more of a build up between the two love interests, and there could have been like a bit more, I guess, yearning. I'm hesitant to say yearning because I feel like it's become such a buzzword now and it's like trendy and everyone wants to see it for good reason. I think we do need more yearning, but like in this sense, it don't gotta be nothing crazy, right? But like just a little extra. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I don't know. It just felt like on one page they're not together, on the next page they are, you know? So just a little extra padding, if you will. Based off the 2 books of hers that I've read, Hannah writes more wholesome romances, which I really enjoy. I love a good spice. I do. I mean, there is spice in this book, but I do think, I don't know for sure, because again, second book of Hannah's that I've read, but I think Hannah has a bit of a face writing kink, because it has happened in both books. I'm not necessarily mad about it, but it did stand out in both of the books. And I'm like, if I read more of yours, is this going to be a consistent theme that shows up? Just curious. And like I said, our male main character has a buzz cut. Love me a buzz cutted king. Love me a buzz cutted king. Big fan. Then The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I have such a hard time saying this title because I get this one mixed up with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, right? That's the title, I think. This book was an experience, let me tell you. Again, recommended to me by my friend, and she is the type of person who is really good at predicting what happens next and just being able to think critically and read between the lines or pay attention to details in films and things that she's like, this is what's gonna happen. I'm like, how do you know that? I'm able to do a bit easier in books because I'm able to like take time to process all the details better, whereas like a film, it doesn't always give you time to process. It's just like on to the next thing. But she was completely caught off guard by this book and the way it ended that I was like, bet, I'm gonna get competitive about this. And I'm not a very competitive person. And I was like, you know what, for shits and giggles, I'm gonna take notes while reading this book and see if I can figure it out. So we have our main character who wakes up in 8 different bodies for 8 days straight, trying to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. And if they don't solve it in those 8 days, then their timeline resets. They have to start those 8 days over, and they wake up with no recollection. They don't remember how far they got in solving the case. They don't remember who did what. Everything just resets. It's a really fascinating whodunit story. It's very much like Happy Death Day meets Knives Out. The world, I don't want to spoil too much because learning about the world and how it's set up is like a big part of the plot, but I will say it's a prison, and so people get put into a time loop to solve unsolvable murders as a form of punishment. So like I said, I took notes while reading this book, and I ended up being half right, which is really exciting and kind of ironic considering the title, but I consider that a win. And I guessed it actually really early on, and I was FaceTiming my friend about it, and she just kind of got silent and gave me a side eye, and I was like, am I onto something here? Did I figure it out? And she just would not answer me. I'm like, so I'm on to something. Then the second part like threw me completely off guard. Guys. Yeah, the second half completely threw me off guard, and I loved it. I was shocked. Gobsmacked. The book left me feeling so many different emotions. I felt both satisfied and unsatisfied with the ending, and still very curious about the world building because it ties up most of the loose ends, but then there's still a few left open, and it's like, well, what would happen now? But you're never going to get to know because there's not a sequel, and I don't think there's going to be a sequel. I don't think there should be a sequel, actually. I don't think anyone would benefit from a sequel for this specific story. I could see it being like Knives Out, where it's kind of a collection of like, oh, here's all these different prisons, and here's all these different unsolvable mysteries. I could see it kind of going that direction, but specifically for this character, there is no point in continuing the story. And I just had this huge question at the end of like, why did you choose that ending? And why did you have the main character make these decisions? It just, ooh. Ooh, kind of gives me chills. Kind of gives me chills thinking about it. And I just can't rave enough how much fun it was to take notes. I didn't take the notes in the book. I took it in a separate notebook. I'm not one who often reads murder mysteries. That's usually not my genre. It's usually contemporary romance, young adult, fantasy, somewhere in those three realms. And this was a really great palate cleanser for me. Taking the notes just got me more engaged with the story. Honestly, after this, I can't recommend not only the book, but taking notes enough, just because it makes you think more critically about the story and it takes your reading experience to another level because you're having that extra engagement with it. I think you should read it. If you read it and don't like it, that's okay. I'll be a little upset, but that's okay. Then we have The Rebel and the Rose by Catherine Doyle. This was the sequel to The Dagger and the Flame. I gave this a 4 out of 5. It's hard not to spoil too much, right? Oh gosh. But I guess, okay, to give you the premise of the series, I guess overall, we have Seraphine and we have Ransom. Seraphine deals with light magic, using light as a form of magic to like ward off evil and protect herself and others. And then Ransom deals in dark magic. That is a lot of like smoke. The smoke can like kill people and create demons and like more negative. Okay, so they're on like opposing sides. Ransom is tasked with killing Seraphine, but he is fascinated by her and she is fascinated by him. They're kind of like circling each other.
And what are you circling me? What were you, a vulture in another life?
But no one's like pulling the trigger. No one's killing.
You know, do the death.
And it becomes a sort of like star-crossed lovers situation. And then there's other stuff that happens, whatever. I did this both reading the hardback and as an audiobook. I cannot recommend the audiobook enough. Oh my goodness. If you specifically... What the is that? There's a bug in here? Oh my god. If you love Shadow and Bone, if you love Six of Crows, if you miss the show, if you miss Freddie Carter, like I do, every day, rip. He's alive, but his character of Casbreaker is done for because of the cancellation. Go listen to the audiobook. I think we should have more actors do audiobooks because I've been getting into audiobooks more often because of the convenience of them. However, I'm still very picky about the narrators. Half the time, I do not like them. I don't think they're good. But then there are some narrators that are really good at it. But with Freddie Carter, oh my goodness, he gives the performance of a lifetime in this audiobook, and his character Ransom very much mirrors Casbreaker. So if you miss Casbreaker, if you miss the Crows, go listen to it because it's like listening to a Casbreaker AU, if you will. Anyways, book 1 ends off with this huge cliffhanger. There is this new rift that has formed between Seraphine and Ransom's relationship. And then they're tasked with like going on this quest to like go find these people to deal with this prophecy of sorts. In book 2, we also have the opposing sides banding together. And I love that. That's always so fun to see when you see the two teams that like hate each other the most. And they're like, I guess we gotta team up for this because we're like hella screwed if we do it separately and we're like 50% less screwed if we do it together. So they come team up begrudgingly. Big fan when that happens. The second book focuses a lot on Seraphine and Ransom's relationship and having to now navigate their feelings for each other because of the rift that happened in book 1. I wanted to give this a 5 out of 5, but it got bumped down a star. 1, because it did get kind of repetitive with Catherine dealing with Seraphine and Ransom's like relationship issues, although it was warranted because it's told from both of their POVs and it's like this constant roller coaster of like, what you did was terrible, but I still have feelings for you. Like, how do I move on from this? I know they're still good in you, but like, you did something I can't forgive you, but I also want to try to make this work. And them kind of going in circles for this book makes sense, but it did get repetitive at some times, but it's not nearly as bad as like Iron Flame. Oh my goodness. Seraphine and Ransom are more likable than Violet and Xaden, therefore not as irritating when talking in circles. I think she did a good job talking about the complexity of the relationship and how they have like these duties to themselves and their community, but they feel like they still have a duty to each other, and it kind of sort of, for the most part, gets resolved by the end of the book. I feel like that might be spoiling a bit, but I will also say the reason this was a 4 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5 was because of its predictability. The first book had me gagged the entire time, and I was so shocked by like the plot twist. I was sucked in. I was having to do like schoolwork, and I'd be in the library, and quite literally there'd be times dead silent in the library, and I go and then I'd have to just like shrink in embarrassment. And in this book, it was more predictable. I guessed what was gonna happen more, but I would say that's not necessarily always a bad thing. As a rule, I like to be caught off guard. I think it's more exciting, it's more fun that way. However, sometimes it is fun to know exactly what's gonna happen next. I filmed a TikTok of reactions of me while reading this book, and there's one in particular. I crack up watching it back because I knew what was gonna happen next. I was like, it's coming, I know it is. And I go and I get to the next page, I lose my shit. Sometimes it can be really fun to know what's going to happen next. But going into this book, I was expecting, again, to have a lot of things catch me off guard. And some things did, but less so the second book than the first. Also, another reason why I love this series, there's a character in it named Valerie, which is not a common name to come by, both in books and in film and in real life, actually. And Valerie is not a completely insufferable character. I don't know what it is. Something about like Valerie's and their portrayal in books and films when I've seen it, they're like bitchiest person you've ever met. They're like god awful, which hey, everyone has their moments. I can be a real bitch sometimes. I will not lie. I don't know, seeing a character with the same name as you being given just like this very one-dimensional character trait can be upsetting. And so seeing a character with my name be multi-layered is really nice, really refreshing. Makes me feel good about myself. And also, our personalities are very similar. She's very sarcastic, but she's a good friend. She's, gonna stick up for others, and she wants to do what's right. And she has her bitchy moments. Like, she's like a well-rounded character. She's not just like, oh, Valerie the bitch. Period. The end. It's a fantasy series and it's a trilogy, so I'm assuming there's gonna be some main character deaths. And so far, she has not died. She is alive and well, everyone. So this is a freaking win for the Valeries of the world. Love her. Then I read Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I was right in my prediction that I would not like this book. I rated this book 2.5 stars, and honestly, that's pushing it. I could not get into it. I was confused a majority of this book. I was. Because I just didn't understand the goal the author was trying to accomplish, the world building, a lot of the technicalities of it. And this may make me look not very intellectual, not much of like a critical thinker. And I think I'm okay with that. I'm not even going to try to explain the premise of Babel because I, like I said, was confused the whole time. So, sorry, go look it up yourself. We're not doing that. I will preface with, this is the first R.F. Kuang book that I've read, which I don't think this should have been the book that I started with of hers. Also, this is the first of the dark academia genre that I've read too. From what I understand of the dark academia genre, this book perfectly encapsulates what that genre is all about. I do think this book focused too much on the academia side, which is like, okay, that's like literally half of the name for the genre, is dark academia, right? I felt like R.F. Kuang was doing too much. I felt like she was trying to prove a point half the time of how smart she is, because she has like multiple degrees and she is very smart and she is very thorough in her research. Oh my God. The beginning of the book, she has a 2 or 3 page preface with all the critics out there being like, for everyone who's gonna come for me that this is not like historically accurate and like I'm pulling things from modern day Oxford that wouldn't exist back then. Like half the time I felt like I was reading a textbook, which some days I really appreciated and I thought was really interesting, and other days I was genuinely confused as to like, what does this contribute to the story? Is this pushing the story forward even? And the other half of the time I felt like I was reading the novel of which she wrote. So I think it really does represent the genre well, but there's too much of an emphasis on the academia side, at least in my opinion. And I did not understand the purpose of the footnotes. What was that about? Maybe I need to go watch some interviews with her talking about it. I don't know. She was already super thorough in the novel, regardless of the footnotes. I think 75% of those footnotes could have been taken out and the story would have been exactly the same. I don't think they added a whole lot to the story and its impact. I feel like it was just added in there to appease the critics that she addresses in the preface. Also, like, what point of view were the footnotes supposed to be taking? Because the book overall is told from a third person perspective. And then you got the footnotes thrown in there, and it's like, whose voice is this that I'm hearing these footnotes from? I also felt like Babel was more of a historical fiction novel because it focused so much on the history and the social issues that were happening in London during the like mid 1800s. Because even though this book, if you look on Goodreads, it's classified as like a dark fantasy, and the synopsis talks about this magic system that revolves around silver and languages, I don't think the magic system fit well into this world that she's created. The magic was the catalyst for pushing the plot forward and creating the climax, but otherwise I feel like we were not doing enough with the magic system for it to truly qualify as a fantasy novel. Again, with so much emphasis put on the history and the world building, I don't think it really meshed well together. And there was this excellent point made by someone on Goodreads, because I think they articulate it a lot better than I did. To create an organic fantasy world, an author should either pick their setting based on how they want their magic to work, or pick their magic system based on what makes sense for the setting. Instead, Kwong picked her setting, the Victorian England, and her magic system, words translated on silver bars, based on themes she wanted to tackle with no apparent consideration for the actual compatibility of the two in real life. The result is a world that looks and works exactly like the British Empire, even though its magic has nothing to do with the technology the British used. I completely agree. In this world, hello baby, do you want to come say hi? Hey, come on. Up. Hello. Oh, there she is. There's my baby. Hi. I completely agree with what this reader said. The magic system did not feel like it integrated well into the world. They use language and translators to imbue the silver bars with magic, but the magic does everyday things. There's nothing extra special about it to make it feel magical, to make it feel more like a fantasy, right? Like if you're gonna have a magic system, you're gonna have, I guess, like Harry Potter as a reference, like they make the cars fly and they have flying brooms, and then there's like ghosts and spirits around and magical creatures. Whereas in this world, R.F. Kuang has the silver bars like help the London Bridge stay intact. Okay. I would say the most magical thing these bars do is there's like a barrier on the Babel building that prevents people that aren't Babel magic users and translators, keeps them from entering the building. And lastly, I just think the book did not need to be as long as it was. I'm not opposed to reading a hefty book. However, once again, bringing it back around to, she is very thorough, to the point it gets repetitive. She explores a lot of themes regarding social structure of the world and racism and misogyny and imperialism that's happening. She digs those themes like into the ground, to the point you get to the end of the book and it's just the same thoughts occurring within the main character over and over and over again, because the character ends up stuck, cornered, like internal factors and external factors. He's cornered all around. There's like no escape for him at the end. And so on one hand, you could argue it's purposeful, he feels stuck, but you could also argue on the other hand that like, we get it, move on to the next thing that's going to happen. Again, haven't seen any interviews, haven't really done my research into her goal with the book, but the book, it just feels very strung out, which kind of plays into the plot because there's just a lot of waiting that happens at the end. And hey, maybe R.F. Kuang wanted the reader to feel the weight and the uneasiness from all that waiting, but I didn't. I got bored of it and I said, let's move on, let's get to the end of the book. So this was a no for me. If you're a fan of Babel, sorry. I told my friend all these thoughts too, and she's like, oh no, I'm sorry you didn't like it. I was like, hey, that's not your fault. I'm glad I did read it. I'm glad I tackled it. And I can say, hey, I read it and I know for sure I didn't like it. I'm glad I went through with it, but it was rough. It was rough. The last book was The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino. This was fun. But something felt off about it. I don't know what it was. It was driving me nuts the entire book. I couldn't figure out, and I'm still trying to figure it out, of what exactly I didn't like. I just could not enjoy this book to the level that everyone else did. Again, I was recommended this book by Eden on Book Talk, and I was expecting to have my socks blown off. And my socks were still half on my feet by the time this book ended. We have our FMC named Gray, and we have our MMC named Kier, short for Kiernan. These two are childhood friends. They're both now in the military, and it's set in this fantasy world where you have people who are wells who contain magic in them, and they funnel that magic to a mage, where the mage then uses the magic funneled into them to do magical things. So Gray is the well for Kier as a mage. It's set in this world where all these countries are at war with each other because there was this Isle of Loch, and the Isle of Loch, whoever runs that kingdom, is the magical entity. They provide the magic that fuels like the whole continent, and that isle has been destroyed for 15-20 years. And so all these countries are at war, and there's still hope that there's a descendant of the Loch family, the Loch clan, the Loch royal line, and whoever finds that descendant will then have control over the rest of the continents, because the Isle of Loch, the way their kingdom works is their kid, when they become of age, they marry into a certain country, and whatever country they like marry into, that country gets the most magic fueled into them in comparison to the rest. So current day, all the countries are hoping to find the descendant so that they can capture them and have control of the magic and have their country have the most magic, thus like winning wars and things. This book, I thought it was very predictable, which was kind of a bummer. I knew early on what was going to happen, where it was headed, which was a bummer because there was Dagger in the Flame and Rose in the Rebel, where I was kind of caught off guard with some stuff and it was exciting. And this one, I like knew it was coming and I wasn't as excited about it. I did love, though, the romance in it with Kier and Gray. They're childhood friends that have had deep feelings for each other for a long time, but the two of them are just so oblivious and overthinkers that they're like, no, the other doesn't love me. They've been in love with you the whole time. And it's funny because basically from page 1, these two are low-key married to each other, but not like they're not in a relationship at the beginning of the book. And especially with how their magic system works and them being like paired together because like she's the well to his magic. Again, it's giving married. It's giving power duo, and they are a powerful duo. But then they just have like been at each other's sides, attached at the hip, for as long as they can remember, and you never once have like mentioned your feelings to each other. Okay. There's a lot of queer representation in this book, which was very enjoyable. I haven't read a lot of queer books. This was kind of fun. It was kind of confusing, though, I will not lie. And this is not me trying to like, I'm an ally. I swear I am. This is not me trying to be mean, but I was confused and it took me a while to get used to, because specifically there's a character in the book named Britt who is non-binary. And they use the pronouns they, them. And so every time Britt was on the page, would refer to Britt as they or them. And that's like plural. That's a plural pronoun, right? But it's a singular person. Why is the author saying that there's multiple people? Like, I'm confused. And the author was just referring to Britt. It's something that I had to catch myself a lot to like fix it and remind myself, hey, they use different pronouns. There's something about the book that I can't quite pinpoint what it is that wasn't it for me. I feel like part of it is maybe I'm just entering a fantasy book slump. It could have just been, it was not the right time for me reading this book. That's the reasoning I'm sticking with, and I plan on revisiting this book later on, probably when the sequel comes out. But something about this book just was not a 5 out of 5 for me. It was 3.75 for me. My final ratings for these books: The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood was a 3.5 out of 5. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton was a 4 out of 5. Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young was a 3.75 out of 5. Rebel in the Rose by Catherine Doyle was 4 out of 5. Babel by R.F. Kuang was 2.5 out of 5. The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino was 3.75 out of 5. Honestly, I'm proud of myself for making it through 6 books. I'm actually on my 12th and 13th book right now, which I'm so impressed, guys. That's a lot for me. That's really good. My reading goal this year is 30 books, whereas last year was 25. Not only am I wanting to break that reading goal, I also just like want to read more because I'm finishing grad school. I will have been in college for like 7 years now, and I really haven't had a lot of time to just read, and I'm excited to enter the adult world and just have more time to do something that I love. I have had so many books on my TBR list that have been there for years that I'm just trying to get through all of them. A few years ago, I came out with, here's my physical TBR list. A good chunk of those books are still there, and it's been like 2, maybe 3 years since I made that video, okay? I want to get through them. The books I've been reading since those 6 have been kind of all over the place. I've read Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Baston. Promise Me Sunshine was pretty on par with what I like for like contemporary genres. So Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. I love Greek myths, but Clytemnestra was not it for me. I was very close to DNFing it a lot of times. I'm learning that I might not like Greek retellings. This is the second one that I will have read, not by this author, but of like the Greek retelling bubble, and I didn't like either of them. So I still want to try and experiment with that genre, but it's not looking great so far. It's not, which is kind of upsetting. The Horse and the Boy from Chronicles of Narnia, it's book 5. In the middle, like it was fine. I didn't think much of it. Rivals by Jilly Cooper was kind of a slay. It was kind of boring sometimes, but also kind of a slay. The Lost Ticket I finished the other day was not it for me. I was really hoping I would like it, and I didn't. It's been kind of all over the place. I just really want to make it through my list. There's so many books on there that I want to read. Any of the ones that I'll just throw up on the screen are on my list. And being on, Book Talk, Bookstagram, all that stuff, I'm constantly finding new books to add to the list that it's really exhausting, that I'm like, I just want to get through what I have already. I'm like competing with myself about it because I don't need to read that many books. Like, it's okay if I don't read that much or I don't read that fast. And it's kind of hard not to compare yourself to others online sometimes, but I'm really just trying to focus it on just keep reading, just keep doing what you love. And sometimes you're going to find books that you like, and sometimes you're going to find books that aren't good. And it's all for fun, and it's all for entertainment, and it's also all about learning. I just keep saying the same shit over and over and over again. So I'm going to cut the video here. And my low battery light went on, which is always the cue that I need to stop talking because I've rambled on too long. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully I'll be back soon. And like, subscribe, comment. You know the drill, and I'll see you in the next one. So, bye.